99 Maui victims have been publicly identified. The total number of Ukrainian and Russian troops killed or wounded since the war in Ukraine began 18 months ago is nearing 500,000. Hamas led a surprise attack on towns, a music festival, army bases, and other locations in Israel, killing roughly 1,200 people and taking about 240 hostages. But why should we care? Simply put, none of these ongoing conflicts have affected any single one of us directly. Or have they? Economist intelligence states that Russia's invasion of Ukraine will have an important impact on the US economic and political outlook this year. The conflict will drive up global commodity prices, fueling inflation, and weighing on US economic growth. As a result, we have lowered our forecast for real GDP growth this year from 3.4% to 3%. This graph clearly shows a drop in GDP growth from the beginning of 2022, right when the Russian invasion of Ukraine began. A large problem in our current climate is the unfathomable amounts of misinformation that is easily accessible and not fact-checked. Whether malicious or unintended, anyone can spread information. Even our politicians, who have a large sphere of influence on the general public, are known for consistently spreading misinformation. Take the former vice president of the Trump administration, Mike Pence, for instance. Mike stated, "In the 4 years of the Trump-Pence administration, we achieved energy independence for the first time in 70 years. We were a net exporter of energy, but from very early on, with killing the Keystone Pipeline, taking federal lands off the list for exploration, sidelining leases for oil and natural gas, once again, before Ukraine ever happened, we saw a rise in gasoline prices." However, credible sources state that this claim has zero meaning, as the real reason for gas markups was COVID. "COVID changed the game, not President Biden," said Patrick Dahan, the head of petroleum analysis for GasBuddy, which tracks gasoline prices. U.S. oil production fell in the last 8 months of Trump's tenure. Is that his fault? No. So, how do we combat this problem of spreading the wrong info? Well, simply put, the working class needs to come together and work to fight misinformation. Everyone is susceptible to reading a headline and believing it, or hearing someone important say something important and accepting it as truth. We as a people need to start working together to make sure we have the proper information to come to the educated solutions more efficiently. Obviously, a lot of people don't care for problems that are larger than life, but misinformation and poor communication can affect anyone, even on the individual level. Take for instance, Stella Liebeck versus McDonald's. Now this court case is famous for one of two reasons to most people. When this case was originally relayed to the masses, it was portrayed as a bitter old 79-year-old woman making her own mistakes, spilling her coffee, and trying to make a quick dollar off of it. However, the real story was very much hidden from plain view at the time. This woman had been lambasted online for something that most people would agree was a very good reason to sue over. The official record for the case states the coffee was not just hot, quote unquote, but dangerously hot. McDonald's corporate policy was to serve it at a temperature that could cause serious burns in seconds. Mrs. Liebeck's injuries were far from frivolous. She was wearing sweatpants that absorbed the coffee and kept it against her skin. She suffered third-degree burns, the most serious kind, and required skin grafts on her inner thighs and elsewhere. This case clearly shows that any person of any stature or popularity can be negatively affected by quick spreading misinformation. But how do we truly eradicate this problem? Before we can answer that, one must understand what it looks like to be a normal person in our current information-dense climate. To figure this out, I interviewed a friend of mine asking him questions about recent events and news to test his knowledge. How often do you watch the news?
Never.
Do you ever go out of your way to find information on current day events?
Sometimes.
Tell me what you know about the current Israel-Hamas war.
I know that there's a whole lot of people in Palestine being displaced and dying for no reason, and that they're bombing civilian buildings.
Tell me
a
what
whole lot of bad stuff.
Okay. Tell me what you know about the current Ukrainian-Russian war.
I honestly thought that was over, but I guess not. I know that started 2 years ago, I guess.
Alright.
And Russia invaded Ukraine for no reason because they're big and greedy.
Yeah. Alright, thank you. Now that we've had a look into the average knowledge of a young adult, we can really start to take strides into figuring out how to patch up this problem. I know I asked how we eradicate this, but the fact of the matter is, you can't. There will always be someone who wants to spread misinformation for their own personal gain. However, we can make a movement towards making sure that the majority has the proper tools and knowledge to combat misinformation. First off, check your sources. This may seem obvious, but it truly is the number one way we can repel misinformation. Second of all, Don't believe every single headline or take titles too literally. What I mean by this is that news and media companies want clicks. They will stretch the meaning of a title or headline as much as possible to get your attention. So make sure you actually read the entire article. In the end, the battle against misinformation will only grow tougher as long as we evolve and create better technology for the spreading of information itself. So do your part in making sure you stay properly educated.